some of the regions, in fact, the 3 different regions in Israel during the time of Christ. And you'll hear these often spoken of, and that is you'll hear Judea, Samaria, and Galilee. Those 3 regions, and that's pretty much all of Israel's land and cities and everything are within those 3 regions. So hopefully we're going to define these regions a little bit and hopefully get a little understanding of how things were back in the time of Christ. So when you're reading through the Gospels and everything, you'll think, oh, okay, I remember this. And look in Acts chapter 8, verse 1. First, I'm just going to give you a verse here that tells you that these are regions. They're not cities. They're not states or anything. They're a region. I guess like Montgomery County is a region or something like that. But Acts chapter 8, verse 1 says, and Saul was consenting unto his death, and at that time there was a great persecution against the church which was at Jerusalem, and they were scattered abroad throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria, except the apostles. So a lot of the brethren got, they got scattered, and that's how the Lord does things, I mean, the apostles stayed put, but some of the brethren scattered. But when they scattered, they start talking about what's going on, and that's, Lord sometimes scatters a church. I mean, he has to do that with Baptists, or we'd never get anything done if he didn't split Baptist churches. And I've seen him splinter and split and splinter some more. But sometimes you get some good churches out of that carry on the work, But anyway, these are 2 of the regions that are mentioned, Judea and Samaria. Judea, you can say it's the land of the Judean Jews. Now, I saw one place I read said it's the land of the Jews, but we're going to find out that, listen, all of Palestine's the land of the Jews. There's this teaching going around that somehow the only people that came back to Israel during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah that were present in the land when Jesus shows up is somehow just the tribe of Judah or the Judean Jews. But we're going to find out that's not so. We're going to find out that there were that all of the 12 tribes came back. Now, what number? I'm not so sure about that. I don't have anything to prove that. But we see about 7 different tribes that are back in the land just in the Gospels. And I'm not going to go through all that, but just lean away from that, because then they try to say that all these other tribes, there's 10 lost tribes, that somehow England's one of those, and I think I think England is Ephraim and we're Manasseh. Bible says, they tried them, would say they are Jews and are not, and found them liars. Yeah, okay. So when we're talking about the region of Judea, it's the southern kingdom's capital. The southern kingdom's capital is Jerusalem, which was part of Judah's inheritance. Jerusalem is part of Judah. So the southern kingdom is referred to as Judah. Yet there is one more tribe that is connected with Judah, and who's that? Benjamin. But we don't call it Benjamin, we call it Judah. Why? The capital is in Judea. Look at Luke chapter 23, verse 5. Here's a verse, and it's only one verse I'm going to give you about the regions and how that any of the Israelites that were in those regions are considered Jews. In Luke 23, 5, and it says, and they were the more fierce, saying, he stirreth up the people, teaching throughout all Jewry. That's not jewelry, that's Jewry. Teaching throughout all Jewry, beginning from Galilee. See, here's the top, Galilee, all the way down here, Judea. That's Jewry. Okay, that's just not Judean Jews or Jews of Judah. It's all the Jews. So that's just one thing. And then let's look at why when Jesus shows up. Okay, it's a little confusing when Jesus shows up of actually what's going on here, because you got this Samaria right here in the middle of everything. So let's look at how that began. Look at 1 Kings chapter 12. And I'm trying to be as brief as I can about the history of it. There's a lot that led up to it, and there's a lot after it. You know, 1 Kings 12, look at starting at verse 12. And this is when, after Solomon died, Rehoboam, his son, takes over in his place. And the wisest man that ever lived raised a fool. And he didn't take advice from his elders and from the elderly, and as a result of that, the kingdom splits right here, yeah. He says in verse 12, so Jeroboam, all the people came to Rehoboam the third day, as the king had appointed, saying, come to me again the third day. And the king answered the people roughly. He's not a good politician, is he? And forsook the old men's counsel that they gave him. And what they told him is, speak nice to people, be kind, you know, go easy on them, cut taxes, you know, do something. It says, he spake to them after the counsel of the young men, saying, my father made your yoke heavy, and I will add to your yoke. My father also chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. Boy, he knows how to win friends and influence people, doesn't he? Wherefore the king hearkened not unto the people, for the cause was from the Lord. In other words, the Lord knew this was going to happen. Let this young whippersnapper get deceived, that he might perform his saying, which the Lord spake by Ahijah the Shilonite unto Jeroboam the son of Nebat. Now this Jeroboam is like a nobody until now. He's somebody that, you know, the 10 northern tribes kind of look up to, but man, he's a pagan. This is bad news all the way around. So it says, so when all Israel saw that the king hearkened not unto them, the people answered the king, saying, what portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel. Now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed into their tents. But as for the children of Israel, which dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. Now that's interesting. Notice that there's still some Israelites, I'm talking about the 10 northern tribes, that are still in Judah. Sometimes we think that only Judean Jews were there. No, there were some others there. Just like you had Levites scattered throughout the land, and I can show you where a lot of them came back to Jerusalem. They left their inheritances, their cities, and came back to Jerusalem. So how it happened was you have this split. And what you have is you have Judea and Samaria. Okay? Galilee's not in the picture here. Actually, Galilee would be considered part of that because the 10 northern tribes, their inheritance went from here all the way up to here. So they're actually where their inheritance is. You notice that Judah is pretty large. Why? Because the scepter shall not depart from Judah. You know, with Judah and Benjamin, even with the other 10 tribes, man, they were comparative in power and force because of the size of their, the numbers and their, even Rehoboam, try to get the word here, he fortified his cities. He built cities, he fortified cities. I guess he wanted to make sure there wasn't going to be a problem with the 10 northern tribes. There wasn't for a while, but eventually they start clashing and fighting. So you have these regions split up here. So you have two regions that are now completely distinct from one another. Judea with Jerusalem as its capital for the two tribes of Judah and Benjamin. Samaria became the capital of the northern 10 tribes. And a city called Samaria was built. And this was located in Mount Ephraim. So God refers to these 10 northern tribes. Okay, this is Judea where Benjamin and Judah are, and there's still some Israelites there. But from here, all the others that have inheritance there, like Naphtali, Gad, and, you know, of course part of Gad's on the other side of Jordan, but some others, all the other 10 that are involved here, they have a capital city of Samaria. And Samaria, that capital city, is in Mount Ephraim. That's why you have the reference in the Old Testament where he calls the northern 10 tribes, not just Israel, but he calls them Samaria, or he calls them Ephraim. Now we know that Ephraim's a tribe, but because the capital is there, it's just like Judea. Okay, it's not just Judah, right? It is another tribe involved. So when he's talking about Judea, he's talking about the two southern tribes, but when he's talking about Ephraim, he is in reference to the 10 northern tribes. And you'll find that as you're reading through. I'm trying to think of, it may be Isaiah. In Isaiah, you might have that reference. Well, here, okay, look at Isaiah 7:9. I got a verse right here. How's that? So he could refer to him as Samaria, Ephraim, or Israel. And it's hard. That's when it starts getting hard to keep things straight. I'm reading through there, man, all them kings. It's mind-boggling. And getting it straight of who's the king of who. And some of them even cross over. It is really hard to do. Genealogies, man. Not my thing. Puzzles, genealogies, anything that requires mental processes is beyond me. Isaiah 7:9, and the head of Ephraim is Samaria. See that? That's because Samaria and Ephraim are in the same place. So he can refer to, it's like during the Civil War, you had Washington, then you had Richmond. Because I think eventually that's where the South moved their capital, was to Richmond, Virginia. So you could refer to the two armies or the two states or the two countries as Washington and Richmond. That's just, and the Bible does the same thing. Look at Isaiah 7:17, the 17th verse there. And the Lord shall bring upon thee and upon thy people and upon thy father's house days that have not come, from the day that Ephraim departed from Judah. But he's not just talking about one tribe departing from another one tribe. He's talking about the 10 tribes departing from Judea, where the capital was and everything. All right, and who's he going to send on them? The king of Assyria. That's who he ends up sicking on them. That's who comes after him. Isaiah 9:9 says, and all the people shall know, even Ephraim and and all the people shall know, even Ephraim and the inhabitant of Samaria, that say in the pride and stoutness of the heart, and I didn't even go on because I just wanted to keep connecting those Ephraim and Samaria. Ephraim, Samaria. Okay? So, these kingdoms split. Okay? There's the split right there. You got northern Israel, southern Judah. Those are the two kingdoms. And then you have these lines in Kings and Chronicles. You have the lines for Judah, you have the lines for Israel when you're watching these kings in here. Well, who goes into captivity first? Yep, the northern 10 tribes go into captivity first. And it's the king of Assyria that comes and swoops down on them and takes them into captivity. So, look at 2 Kings chapter 17. You know, when you're kind of reading through and you're reading about the Samaritans and all that, you wonder, who are the Samaritans? I mean, who are these Samaritans? And why are they so hated by the Jews? Aren't they Jews? I mean, it's Samaria. Well, look, here's what happened. 2 Kings 17, verse 24. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, Cutta, and from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, I don't know, Sepharvaim, I'll just call it that, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar learned from this also. If you want to destroy a nation, seed it with people from other lands. Sound familiar? Why? They bring their culture and destroy yours. They bring their gods and destroy yours, their religion. They bring their whatever, paganism, they bring it into your country, or crime or whatever, and disease, huh? I'm sorry? Well, yeah, there you go. Actually, this started with the devil, didn't it? So they placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel, and they possessed Samaria and dwelled in the cities thereof. And so it was at the beginning of their dwelling there that they feared not the Lord. Therefore the Lord sent lions among them and slew some of them. So when they send this crowd in there and they bring all their gods, you know, and they understand that there's a God in the land. They're a bunch of polytheists. There's some God in the land. Well, the God of this land sent lions after them. He said, you will respect me. You may not know who I am, but you will respect me. It says, therefore they spake to the king of Assyria, saying, the nations which thou hast removed and placed in the cities of Samaria, know not the manner of the God of the land. Therefore he hath set lions among them, and behold, they slay them, because they know not the manner of the God of the land. Because, man, we don't know how to treat this God. We don't know how to respect him. We don't know how to acknowledge him. He said, he's killing us. Then the king of Assyria commanded, saying, carry thither one of the priests whom ye brought from thence, and let him go and dwell there, and let him teach them the manner of the God of the land. Then one of the priests whom they had carried away from Samaria came and dwelt in Bethel, that's the house of God, and taught them how they should fear the Lord. You know, the Bible says at the time this ignorance God winked at, but now commandeth all men everywhere to repent. And he's talking about idols. So that's the reason why when Jesus talks of the Samaritan woman, she knows about Jacob's well. I mean, she knows about the God of the Bible, the God of the Jews. Why? This priest has had to teach him, said, man, you're going to be lion bait if we don't get you guys up to par here. But they still had their gods. We'll see that. Look, verse 29. Howbeit every nation made gods of their own, and put them in the houses of the high places which the Samaritans had made, every nation in their cities wherein they dwelt. And the men of Babylon made Succoth-Benoth, and the men of Cuth made Nergal, and the men of Hamath made Ashima. Now, they're talking about cities. But what they made, those cities, they named those cities after the deity that they were going to worship. Each one of them. Succoth-Benoth, or Benoth, I don't know how you pronounce that. That's a city named after a Babylonian deity. It means the booths. You notice the word Sukkoth? Booths? Booths of the daughters. Don't ask me to repeat that. Okay? It's interesting here that two of these are female deities and only one is a male deity. And you know what they're doing here when they get there. Now, I read someplace where it said, well, that the Jews would not mingle with them. That's not true. Listen, when the Jews are in exile in Ezra and Nehemiah, man, they messed around and married, and you see a mass divorce taking place, I think, in the book of Nehemiah. A massive divorce. You know, you've seen those people get married by the numbers. This was a divorce by the numbers. Go read it. He said, God's against divorce. He wasn't against that one. They had to put away all those strange wives that couldn't even speak Hebrew. They had to support those children, but they had to put those children away because they didn't know Hebrew. And so they mingled. That's why a Samaritan's considered Jew and Gentile in one body. They're a half-breed. And that's the reason why, one of the reasons why they're hated. But this is the main reason why they're hated, is because of their false gods that they brought with them. So the Ashima, the city was named after a female goddess of fate. Okay, Hamath is part of Syria. Now let's go to that one about Assyria. Nergal is a city named after the god of the underworld, and that's a city near Babylon. And I'll tell you where we're at. When they tell the king of Assyria and said, "Hey man, we got real problems here. We don't understand the god of the land," he takes people from Babylon. And you see right there, Kata, he grabs people from there and he comes all the way over to Hamath before he enters into the northern part of Palestine there. Where is Hamath at? Right here. Harmouth. That says Harmouth, doesn't it? I'm looking for Hamath. Is the same thing? Right there. He grabs them from 3 different places, and actually more than that. It mentions there are 5 different cities. But those 3 are on this map to show you that he grabs them as he's going along. And what he's doing is he's just emptying the city of anybody that he doesn't, maybe undesirables, maybe problem children, but he's grabbing them because they're saying, you know, you took us out of our land and we're in this strange land with a strange God and he's killing us. So I guess what I'm saying is here, we see that Jesus showed the Samaritans some mercy because he said, go not into the way of the Samaritans. Yet he did. It may not have been their fault that they're there. You know, the king of Babylon just kind of did what he wanted. I'm sorry, the king of Assyria kind of did, just like the king of Babylon, did what he wanted, when he wanted, with who he wanted. And if you didn't go along with the program, you know, it was curtains for you. So you have those 3 places. Again, what was the purpose? To seed that nation. Remember, Judah's not even really fallen yet. If it has, I don't know how long it took them to do this, but Judah is outlast Israel by about 100 years, somewhere there, maybe longer. Close to 100 years. But the nations have learned that you can, especially the Soviet Union, they learned that you can subjugate a nation in one generation if you're patient. Now, it takes at least one generation, but usually it might take 2 or 3. I think they're working on about the 3rd one now, and I think it's complete. Because what they've done is they chip away at your morality, check mark. They chip away at your culture, check mark. They chip away at your beliefs, check mark. And then they chip away at your history. And then what you have is you have a generation that you can pretty much tell them whatever you want. There's a generation that curseth their father, doth not bless their mother. And we've got that generation. They said they would do it, and they did it. And it's just slowly chipping away at it. You know, I mean, some of us still have some idea what America's about. This generation coming up, they haven't got the faintest idea what it's about. All they've been told is that, you know, that we're destroying the planet, and that we're selfish, and that we Americans want everything, and I'm not going to deny all of that, but they don't realize that we're a free people, free to worship God whenever we want, and that's the only thing that really matters. If communism had freedom of religion, it would probably be loved worldwide, but it's when you start thinking, they don't want you to think. We have a government that does not want us to think for ourselves anymore. They're telling you what you can think. It's called a hate crime. And they knew this. They knew it in Assyria. They knew it in Babylon. They knew it in Persia. You just start mingling people in there, man, and you will mess that thing up so bad that even at the time when Jesus Christ shows up, which is somewhere around 400 or 500 years later, when he shows up, it's a mess. So Israel hated the Samaritans because of the interbreeding, because of the false gods. It was so bad that when the Jews that lived north of Samaria, like in Galilee up there, would travel around Samaria through, I'm going to say Perea, to get to Jerusalem for the feast. In other words, instead of coming straight down from Galilee, they would go around like this. And this is where Jordan is. And Amman is the capital of Jordan, but sounds like Ammon, doesn't it? I don't know if that's where actually your Ammonites are today in Jordan, but I mean, they would rather go through that pagan territory than go through a bunch of half-breeds. That's how things are. That's just how things are. Look at John chapter 4. This explains, when you're reading John chapter 4, this will make sense to you now. And we just need to look at a couple verses. This is about the woman at the well in Samaria. And look at verse 9. Then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, How is it that thou, being a Jew, asketh drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. They won't even pass through the land. Look at verse 22. This is what Jesus tells her. Ye worship, ye know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. I mean, there's a little venom in that verse, letting her know that, look, you're not sure which God's the right God anyway. You got so many of them here. But we know what we worship. And salvation is of the Jews. Straight out put it to her. You know, you can tell that to anybody. Salvation is of the Jews, because you'll bow your knee to a Jew and be saved, or you won't be. Now look at verse, let's see, what other verse here have I got? Look at verse 27. And upon this came his disciples and marveled that he talked with the woman. Can you believe he's talking to that dirty pagan Samaritan, that half-breed? I mean, they marveled. Are you talking to her? That's why I seem to think that it wasn't their fault that they got moved to that land. They were who wants to leave their own land to go to this place? When they got their own gods, they got their own people, they got their own relatives, and he's moving them out. You know, it was a forced migration is what it was. Forced march. And that's the reason why he witnesses to her. And what does it say about the people in Sychar, which is in Samaria? It says that many of them believed because of his word. Look at Matthew 10. And this is with him saying this in Matthew 10. Matthew 10, verse 5 and 6. He says, these 12 Jesus sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not. Yet he turned around and came right through Samaria. I'm sure that shocked him. Why are we going this way, Lord? Let's go around. Nope, we're going straight through. He says, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, because that was their calling. But Jesus was showing them that his calling is to seek and to save that which is lost, and that included a bunch of Samaritans. A bunch of Gentiles, a bunch of pagans. He was there for all of them. And he was letting them know that. But they marveled at it, man. Now, go to the one with the West Bank. You see how this picture is, the Samaria? See that? Now look at the West Bank. Okay. You see how? Now, the West Bank is considered a good portion of Samaria and a smaller portion of Judea. Look at the size of that, and that's the contentious part. Why is it contended? Well, because the Samaritans have been there for generations and hundreds of years. And so it's a contentious part. But it all belongs to Israel. It all belongs to the Jew. And notice that is the West Bank, Samaria. And then there's a part of Judea here. So it's still a place of contention. Now, not everything was negative about the Samaritans. Matthew 10, verse 30 says, no, that's not it. Oh, I got the wrong verse here. Nope, I don't know where I'm at now. I have no idea where that is. Maybe Luke. Let me try Luke. I'm not even sure how it reads, what I was looking at. Okay, yeah, it's Luke. Luke chapter 10, verse 30. And Jesus answered and said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment and wounded him and departed, leaving him half dead. I thought, notice how the Bible uses things like that? Half dead, the skin of your teeth. A little bird told me, sayings, colloquials like that. Verse 31, and by chance there came down a certain priest that way. Okay, we got the priest, then in verse 32 we got the Levite, but then in verse 33, but a certain Samaritan. A certain Samaritan. That means a disgusting half-breed, pagan Jew-Gentile came walking down the road and had mercy on this Jew. That's what it's saying. That's interesting because in the tribulation, it's the Gentiles that are required to have mercy on the Jews that are scattered abroad, to give them water, food, visit them in jail, help them if they're sick. That's just kind of interesting, isn't it? But he talks about this good Samaritan, and then we think, all the Samaritans are good. A good Samaritan. Actually, he's just telling you that this was a good Samaritan. Not because the Jews are thinking, I don't know of a good Samaritan. Well, there's one that Jesus mentions here. Not that they were all good. Let's see. I had another verse here. Let me find it. Luke 17:11. Luke 17:11. And it came to pass as he went to Jerusalem that he passed through the midst of Samaria and Galilee. I mean, the Lord wasn't going around. He goes, we're going straight through. But he told them, go not into the way of the cities of the Samaritans, right? And yet he walked right down through there. Now, they didn't minister. He did. You notice that? I don't think they talked to anybody. He's the one that ministered to the woman at the well. He's the one that told her all things that ever she did. And then she went and told everybody else. And the disciples was like, what's going on? These are Samaritans. We're supposed to kill them, right? You know? All right, so Judea and Samaria, make sense now? So you have this kind of like I wouldn't call it a buffer zone. I'd call it like Israel in that day was divided in the middle of the country. Let's go back there to the first one or the middle one. Israel's divided from Judea up in Galilee there, and that's where your Jews are between these 2 points, with Samaria in the middle. So, and that gets quite confusing when you're reading your Bible until you realize, just remember who these Samaritans are. They're a bunch of pagans that the Assyrian king put in there to just mingle and mess up everything. Galilee, the word means a circuit or district. And that's the tribal territory of Naphtali, Asher, Zebulun, and I'm just thinking they're parts of it. They may not be completely these three. I think here's the problem with Galilee. The tribes failed to eradicate and to extricate the nations that inhabited what God had given to them. Look at Isaiah 9, verse 1 and 2. Isaiah 9, verse 1 and 2. Let's see, have I got it, verses on that anywhere? I had a passage that I can't think of. Oh, yeah, I do. I have it. We'll go to that next. So he says there in Isaiah 9, verse 1 and 2, nevertheless, the dimness shall not be such as was in her vexation, when at the first he lightly afflicted the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterward did more grievously afflict her by the way of the sea beyond Jordan, in Galilee of the nations. Now you'll find a reference to this in the New Testament called Galilee of the Gentiles. Why? Because they never did fully get rid of who they were supposed to get rid of out of this area. So God just said, you know, he's still associating Galilee with the Gentiles, even though we have Nazareth, you have different cities that are in Galilee, Gath, Hepher, that are definitely Jewish. But notice he says there in verse 2, the people that walked in darkness have seen a great light, and they that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them hath the light shined. That's where Jesus is from. He's walking around in that land, and it's a light shining. They don't even realize it. They don't even realize it. And by the way, do you know where Megiddo is? Lower Galilee. Talk about the shadow of death. Talk about a place of mass death. It's right there in Galilee. And yet there was a light. Matter of fact, I don't know if, does it show Megiddo on there? It should be somewhere right in here. Not far from Nazareth. I think there's one that, check another one. I think it's on there. It won't be the Assyrian one. Go to the next one. Yeah. No, not really. Okay. It wasn't far from Nazareth. It's just south of, so it's in the southern part of Galilee, which is in the northern part of Israel. Okay, just to keep you on your toes. Look at Judges chapter 1. When you get all this stuff straightened out in your head, then when you're reading your Bible, man, things start jumping out at you. And I've always been one that said, I really need a good geography course because I didn't really get one. We had a book in Bible Institute, but, it didn't penetrate this skull. And this has been a great help to me because some of this stuff I had no idea. I'm a directional idiot, so this stuff I really had to look at it and study it, and I'll still have problems with spatial awareness of where these places are. That's just something that I've got. It's a problem I have. But if you're aware of it, man, your scriptures start jumping out. You'll start seeing things. Look at Judges 1. Look at verse 28 to 33. And it came to pass when Israel was strong that they put the Canaanites to tribute and did not utterly drive them out. Neither did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites and dwelt in Gezer, and the Canaanites dwelt in Gezer among them. Neither did Zebulun drive out the inhabitants of Kitron, nor the inhabitants of Nahalal, but the Canaanites dwelt among them and became tributaries. Neither did Asher drive out the inhabitants of Acco, nor the inhabitants of Zidon, nor of Elib, nor of Akzib, nor of Helba. Why can't they, Joe, John, Ohio, nor Aphik, nor of Rehob. And he's talking about all these different ones, and there was a lot of them, but that's the reason why he still refers to Galilee of the Gentiles, because they never fully drove these Gentile nations out, and therefore their presence was there, and it was a pretty strong presence. At least in Galilee. Now, the last thing to mention is that Jesus is from this area. He said in Matthew 2:23, and he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which is spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. You say, well, I can't find that anywhere in the Bible. Didn't say you'd find it in the Bible. It said it was spoken by the prophets. Got to watch every word. There's things in here that you're told in the New Testament that the prophets spoke, but nobody in the Old Testament wrote it down. It's not written down to the New Testament. But how did they know the names of the magicians of Egypt? You don't find them back there. What's the names of them? Janus and Jambres, the two banjo players. How did they even know that? You say, well, it got passed down by tradition. Yeah, but the prophets spoke it, but nobody wrote it down. It's not written down. Enoch prophesied, behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints. Find that back there in Genesis. You won't find it. Why? It was spoken by Enoch, but it's not recorded to the New Testament. That's why you have advanced revelation in your Bible. All right, anyway. So he's raised in Nazareth. He's born in Bethlehem, which is right here. Why? He has to come all the way down here because they got to pay their taxes. And at the time they got to pay their taxes, man, she's heavy with child. So she ends up having that baby in Judea, in Bethlehem, where they're from, to pay their taxes. And then they flee into Egypt because things are kind of hot and heavy, but they end up going back up here to Galilee, where they live. So, and that's another thing where you have Judeans. They're from Judah, living in Galilee. So everything wasn't as tight as you might think in dividing up everything, man. You had different folks from different tribes living in different places. That being said, listen, after the dispersion, or after the Nebuchadnezzar put them in captivity, a lot of these people didn't know what they owned at that point. And they may not even had access to what they owned before. Do you think the Jews know today where their inheritance is? They don't even know what tribe they're from. The only ones that have even a hint are the priests, because they have the name Cohen for the Kohathites. They've got some other little Katz, K-A-T-Z, it also means priest. That's how they always knew who their priests were, or at least they think they do, because they would carry that name with them through every generation, no matter where they're at. In the land of that people, the name of priest. Or the name of one of those, the Kohathites, the Merarites, and the Gershonites. Those are the three sons of Aaron that the priesthood can come from. And you'll find them, Gershon, I'm trying to think of other names. I can't think of it right now, but there's quite a few. And you'll find their names are like that. Not just Goldman and some of the other Jewish names that you're familiar with. And but so they kind of think they know who some of the priests are that are over there right now. But as far as the other tribes, they haven't got a clue. Not till they find Urim and Thummim and that ephod to tell them what tribe they're from. Mark 14:70, and he denied again, and a little further after they stood by said again to Peter, surely thou art one of them, for thou art a Galilean, and thy speech agreeth thereto. Kind of an uneducated bunch that lives up north. You know, they're fishermen. I mean, you got Galilee there. So you got fishermen, you got herders and things like that. And Acts 2:7 says that just about all of them, they may have all been Galileans. It says they were amazed and marveled, saying one to another, behold, are not all these which speak Galileans? They're all from Galilee. Or at least they're from that area. In Matthew 21:11, and the multitude said, this is Jesus the prophet of Nazareth of Galilee. Just so we're clear. This is where he was raised. This is where he's from. This is where he begins his ministry. In John 7:52, they answered and said unto him, art thou also of Galilee? Search and look, for out of Galilee ariseth no prophet. And that is a bold-faced lie. Because if you search the scriptures, you'll find that Jonah, which he said there'll be no sign given them but the sign of the prophet Jonah, is from Gath-Hepher. And that is in Galilee. And right there is their condemnation. Why? He said, I'll not give it. He gave them signs and wonders when he first showed up. He stops doing that. He says, in fact, he tells people, I'm going to heal you. I don't want you to tell anybody. Well, he didn't have any problem with it early on. He did it publicly. But now he's doing things a little bit more private. He doesn't want them to know. Why? They've rejected a prophet of the Old Testament. They have rejected Jonah. Because Jonah went to the Ninevites. And they hated him for it. So they said, search the scriptures. There's no prophet from Galilee. And there sure is. And had they accepted that, they would have accepted his, because they know that he saw corruption. It says that Jonah saw corruption. He had a death, burial, and resurrection. Maybe they would have seen it then, right? But since they rejected that, okay. Probably a lot more I could say, but I'm going to stop there. Any questions about what we covered between these three regions?